I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
All right, welcome everyone. All right, so we're going to do the approval of minutes. There's a whole lot of them, so we're going to do it in one fell swoop. So
The only question was, I think in one of the non-publics, somebody had misspelled Amy's name.
okay,
I think it was the one that Kevin wrote. Threw a G in there.
I'll check it.
G and
That that was all I saw.
Andy.
No, Amy calling.
No. I was kidding. All right, unless anybody besides that wants one of them to be pulled out.
I'll make a motion to accept the minutes as presented in bulk.
All right, do I have a second? Okay. Did you get a second? All right, all in favor? No.
Yeah, you need to do roll call. Yeah.
Oh, that's right, we've got people online, okay.
Andy, yes.
Alyssa, yes.
Joe, yes.
Kevin, yes.
Sarah, yes.
Shelley, yes.
Jamie, yes, for the ones I was there for.
Okay, the second is visitors and public comment. Jeremy?
Oh. I want to start with me right off. All right. So I just wanted to touch upon some issues that have been going on in Charlestown Middle School. I was looking to see if we possibly could change some of the policies and procedures to better help the principal there facilitate the issues that are going on. And add some definitions to the handbook and perhaps just change to help Mr.
help.
Blair.
Does you want to comment on that?
Yes, please.
Yes.
For the help.
Mhm.
Oh, that's all she wants to say.
You would like to help? Okay.
I think, most, I would say, correct me if I'm wrong, of the policies that we've talked about relate to bullying and harassment in particular, and also the handbook section related to bullying and harassment and how we deal with student investigations and things of that nature. And one of the struggles that we face and that Mr. Wood and I have talked about, and we've actually talked about since we've talked at an admin team, is, you know, when you have a scenario where one student or a group of students is accused of severe behavior, you know, how do we keep those who are the identified victims in this scenario safe during the investigation process, and while also still maintaining whatever our educational obligations are to the students who are accused of the negative behavior. And that's kind of a sticky point when we deal with it on a personnel level. You know, we can leverage scenarios where we put somebody on paid administrative leave, for instance, so they're still getting their pay for that period of time. Paid administrative leaves, in my experience, has always been described as protection for the person on leave and protection for whoever they were accused of harming or wronging in any way. And, you know, I think there are some severe scenarios where we've leveraged putting a student out during an investigative process, but it's not necessarily a common practice, and we have no guidelines describing how we should go about that or what our district obligation is if a student is out pending investigation. And so that's sort of a void in our policy and our procedures now. The other piece, and Mr. Wood, correct me if I'm wrong, but our policies that related to harassment and sexual harassment for our student population tend to lean more toward, and Missy, you can probably correct me on this too, more toward not peer-to-peer harassment, but, you know, staff adult to child.
Mhm.
And so we don't have a lot helping us govern the peer-to-peer,
Oh.
and those are the types of things we're experiencing, unfortunately. And I, Plum is not alone in that. Like, I don't want us to think that we're the only district that is missing that piece. Like, I actually haven't seen that piece in the last couple districts I've been with. But when it comes to policies and procedures governing how we deal with sexual harassment and harassment in general, peer to peer, there's not a lot of support there right now. And nothing, to my knowledge, exists at the, you know, we pay as a district, we pay a service fee to the New Hampshire School Board Association. So you as a school board have access to their policy database, and they create this database based on school law in the state of New Hampshire, and there's nothing that exists there either. So it's not, I want to be clear that I'm not saying we are negligent in any way. It's just that doesn't exist at the school board level, at the state level. It doesn't exist here, but maybe we want to create something to better support us, because we do, I mean, we're seeing that, unfortunately, we're seeing that in our middle school, and how can we address that? And I appreciate Mr. Wood's research into it and his willingness to come share and speak, and his collaboration with the process that we went through. But I will also say I spent November, December, January, and the first part of February engaged 95% of the time in student investigations.
Yep.
Related to these types of topics,
Yeah.
and we have some systemic work to do at the middle school that we've started. But there are some other, you know, procedural things that we should address at this table.
That, when I was working in Vermont, we had some issues like that made us look real closely at harassment and bullying in Springfield too. We only had one middle school, so we could look at what was going on with our policies there, but you wanted to speak?
I
to that
just
a little
wanted to make sure, the other aspect of it has to do with Title IX.
bit?
And Title IX Title IX is proffered, I guess is the correct word, by the federal government. And it's highly tied into whoever is in the presidential office. And so there have been wild swings in the expectations under Title IX, in the rights that have been given or taken, right? So, and so when the board decides whether they want to look at policy or procedure, it might be easier to look at your procedures, because those you can change pretty easily, whereas your policies, you know, oftentimes they make them somewhat vague so that you have the leeway to put into your procedures.
And they're less problem, because if you can't define the problem, then you can't have justice for that problem.
Yeah.
So when you're looking at, I think it's on page 8 or 9 in the handbook, that when we're talking harassment, you're talking harassment and it's lumped in with sexual harassment. Well, that's two totally different entities. So to lump it in and have just one vague thing, in bullying, you got like 29 points to bully. Well, there's also sexual assault, which unfortunately is having a major uptick. And if you can't define this in your manual as to what they are, then you can't say, well, this is what you do, and this is how we take care of this problem.
And I think you can in the handbook and in the procedures that go with the policy. I mean, you can in the policy too. The problem is you just have to keep changing your policies.
Right, and like with Ms. Leclerc, there's only so much that she can do within that policy and procedure. And if a child is sexually harassing or sexually assaulting another child, that child should not be in school during the duration of the investigation. Whatever happens at the end, you know, there's obviously, you find that the statements are substantiated or whatever it may be. There has to be the node. So the child, like, and I'll tell you flat out, my child was one of the victims. And the fact that the child could sit there in school and continue to do this while the investigation is going on is not acceptable. It's not acceptable for me or any other parent. It should happen to no child in these schools. And during COVID, everyone managed to figure out how to do school from home. Should be no different than I'm not saying we should take away their education or anything like that, but there has to be a safety net. And I know schools are understaffed, and I'm not saying anything about the staff. I'm not saying anything about the school. I just want to fix the problem. I'm not here to point fingers, but and I'm sure it's not just Charlestown Middle School. And that's why I'm here to advocate for our students, for our children, and I'm here to advocate for Ford. And so whatever we can do, we need to look into it, because it's just not acceptable. I have a child that no longer wants to go to school. So I either have to, one, find a different school for my child, or two, try to alleviate this problem at hand. Now I'm going to try to alleviate it before I have to go that route.
Both Shelley and Jamie have their hands up, by the way.
Oh, okay. Shelley, you want to speak first?
Yeah, is it possible that we get this topic on a workshop, an actual date of when we can discuss this further?
I think that was going to be my suggestion. I think that would be a very good suggestion.
You want a 2nd March or 2nd April meeting? Those would be your next workshops.
Yeah, maybe.
Sooner the better. This sounds like we ought to prioritize it.
Yeah.
You know, it's
Yeah.
student
Should be the
safety.
second one in
Yeah.
March.
Second one in March, yeah. So we'll put on the second one in March.
Could we actually invite Corey as well to assist with the conversation? If she wants to.
Our conversation, she has excellent feedback. And I mean, even if I'm not involved in it, she knows how I feel, and she knows exactly my thoughts on it. So whether I'm involved or not is here and there. But I would definitely say I would at least get all the middle school principals here, because
I think,
My question was how aligned are our handbooks for the middle schools? Are they fairly aligned? Are they fairly different?
So I'd say the bullying policy and the harassment and anything related to Title IX has a lot of consistency within all handbooks. That also covers bus procedures and things like that. But the way schools handle it may vary a little bit in the handbook on policies, not policies, on protocols and how they.
Yeah, procedures, like our drop-off procedures, those gonna be a little different, but those, yeah, the laws are pretty much, we meet over the summer months, we've met in the past and shared what each does with the handbook.
Jamie,
Jamie, you want to speak?
Yep, thank you. And thank you for bringing this forward. A couple of thoughts here. One of them is just to caution all of us about, not mentioning any names about any students, because there are certain procedures we have to follow. The second thing, it sounds like a real opportunity for a training proposition with, some of the experts, to help the principals and the administration realize maybe what some of their things, the things they can draw upon if they're in this situation or circumstance, perhaps along with the superintendent. There are avenues like through New Hampshire School Boards Association or New Hampshire School Administrators Association. They do trainings on Title IX, harassment, bullying, and all of that. So it just sounds like maybe this might be a great opportunity for all of us to come together as an administration, to help fix some of the situation of what's going on. And then, of course, address the policies and make the parts of the policies which are our regulations very easily and readily available. Sometimes they're not easy to find. And so I think that's important as well. But thank you. It's an important discussion.
We did have training, and we do have training on Title IX and all of those things. My suggestion, if the board would like to think about it, is maybe inviting one of the lawyers that deals with Title IX and sexual harassment things to the workshop, so that we can be sure that whatever we're doing and talking about is at least allowable under the current regulations.
Yeah, because it would be very frustrating to come up with this great plan and then find out that we couldn't do it because.
Correct.
Yeah.
And one other note, I'm sorry to interrupt. There supposedly a lot of new changes coming in spring this year related to Title IX and harassment.
Which would actually flow in a direction that you would be happy with.
That's what I was gonna say.
Yeah, the current, I wasn't gonna bring, I'm not bringing it. The current rules we operate under are pretty challenging. But they're supposed to change.
The other thing that I was going to say is that if you're thinking about bringing on administrators, I would really think about bringing on, K-12 administrators, because it's really not just a middle school issue.
High school for sure.
It's
Probably
really
elementary
a
too.
Well,
K-12 issue.
it's really K-12.
Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, with my experiences with it in the past, in various districts, not just here, but is that it comes out most. It tends to get loud at the middle school
Yeah.
level, because that's kind of a middle school thing. But it's really, it really is across the board, K through 12.
Yeah.
So I think it does make sense to include the administrators. And I know that special education has there's special education laws around it too. So because we want to make sure that we're protecting everyone's rights. So.
If the board is amenable to it, if I reach out to someone and say, can they come and talk about it in general terms for like the first 45 minutes? And then the group can come together and see what we can do in terms of policy and procedure for the remaining hour or whatever.
That seems like it makes sense. Just that way we would get, I do think it's important for us to look at it, not just at one level or another. We want to, and there's a lot of things, it reaches out it kind of reaches out into a lot of different areas of what are we doing in terms of the climate of the schools, in terms of creating a climate that is not going to be conducive to bullying and harassment. So, and not that anybody's done anything against that, but just, we just need to look at that and see what we can do to help, move that forward. So I think that discussion would be really good.
Right.
Yeah. Does that make sense? Does that feel like we're addressing it somewhat?
Sure.
Unfortunately, it's not something that is there's no quick fix to it. So we have to look at it and really look at it closely and then come up with a plan for how we're going to make that happen. So.
I will see if, I'll talk to the admin and see if, we had Megan Glenn come in from Drummond Woodsum, see if she's a good choice or if we want to go somewhere else, so.
I know that Dean Eggert has presented in the past.
Yeah, Jean's also probably a good choice.
Mhm.
And then there was some other woman who was blanking of their name, so. So we will definitely have someone come. If the board wants to, I know typically during your workshops, you just, it's a board thing. But if you want Mr. Wood to be able to come and listen and get the questions that he might have answered too, if from a legal standpoint, that might be helpful, because I know sometimes as a parent, it's very frustrating not knowing, like, why don't they just do this? And sometimes there's a reason. So,
I would hope that parents, Jeremy, would want to come simply because I want to make sure we hit the mark.
Okay,
May I?
yes, you may.
Mr. Wood is not alone.
no,
in
Oh, no.
his concern, at least not in my building and with the families that I interact with, so I don't know exactly how the board structures or workshop meetings, but
It's a public meeting.
if I can
So anybody
specifically
can-
go out to at least my parents, I think that we have some systemic concerns in my building related to.
I think the only difference is it's a public meeting and typically any public can certainly come. I know typically they've tried to reserve the time for board discussion so that it doesn't become kind of like a free-for-all.
Right, because you could end up with, like, people are passionate about this.
Correct.
topic, right?
Well, it
It's
makes
impacting their
sense.
children, it's
Yeah.
impacting their
Yeah.
families, it's impacting their homes, and so I'm wondering how you want to structure it, if you want to gather public input maybe in a slightly different way, or like you could have nobody show up, you could have just Mr. Wood show up, you could have 20 parents here, but so just
Well-
want the board to know that on the front side.
There's always the option of us having that conversation, coming up with some plans and policies or procedures, and then holding hearings about those procedures to engage a wider community to get more feedback. So that might be a better way to go.
Yeah, I think. that's
Because we
certainly
wouldn't
possible.
put this into effect probably until the next school year anyway, because of the handbook only published once a year, is the way it works
Yeah, you
here.
could do an addendum, but yeah.
So I'm just gonna speak up because I'm over here on the board and have my hand up. It's Jamie. It sounds like if we haven't done any, and I don't know if we have, it sounds like this could be a public forum discussion at each one of our attendance areas. It sounds like it's a bigger issue than just one workshop meeting to me. So I'm assuming that maybe the administrators and the superintendent could maybe have a discussion about that, along with us speaking to an attorney about what our options are. And I don't think we wait till next year. I think we have to move on this as soon as possible because it's not okay.
I agree that we need to do it, we need to, but I think that it is important for us to look at that our board workshop will be to begin the process.
Yeah.
And we wouldn't be, that wouldn't be a thing where we make final decisions at all. It would be a spot where we are talking to the attorney, we're getting ideas, we're finding out the scope of the scope of the issues. And then make a plan for what specifically we're going to do, giving hopefully getting some guidance for the remainder of the year. But I don't think that we can just, make broad decisions on this is a big topic. And so, and it could involve curriculum in terms of how we're, pieces of the curriculum that are the social curriculum and how we go about that. And so that we build the whole environment to be anti-bullying.
I agree. I totally agree with everything you said, Sarah. I do.
You might be able to do a survey monkey.
Mhm.
She knows questions asked. And I think if her and the other principals in the district basically put together between them all, put together a survey and sent it out.
Then we would
You
have that,
might be able to get some of the substantial information.
right, we have that information for the workshop. Yeah,
Right.
that's a very good idea. Okay, so we're gonna put it onto the workshop.
Yeah, I was trying
And
to
we're-
find the date.
It's the 20.
It's same as this one, right? 27th.
The 27th.
27th.
Yeah.
Okay,
And I have one question. Has this been addressed on the short term? For example, your child that doesn't want to go to school anymore, has this been addressed? Or, I mean, what we're talking about is a long-term solution. What are we doing in the meantime? How do we get your child back to wanting to go to school?
There's,
Nothing we can do?
I mean, the damage is done. She's done everything that she possibly can do as principal, right? And I will support her 100% because her and I had a few conversations, so I know that the problem doesn't lie with her, it's on how it's done.
Mhm.
So we don't have a short-term solution for this.
No, and
Because the way the law reads now is just, and as Brendan said, it really restrains you. Because when the previous administration allowed much more leverage for the accused. And so that's what we're dealing with. We're dealing with a law that's very, very difficult.
in Charlotte, for Charlestown itself, not to poke at you guys, but we had a social worker that never got filled, and it was because it couldn't get filled, because it couldn't, so there's no blame there. But
right, no,
that alone may have, or may not have not helped at all.
but it might have.
Right.
We were hoping that it would.
Again, when you were saying previous administration, you were meaning.
Presidential
Administration.
Yeah, I meant like the
Not
law,
part of
the
it.
federal laws really have tied our hands.
I was just thinking the past superintendent, I'm
Because-
like,
Oh, God.
No. Clarify.
Yeah.
The president, it's just, it's
Federal
just,
administration.
It's a
those
federal.
laws change depending on who is in office, and then we have to deal with them.
Let me, just to clarify, it's not necessarily the laws that change, it's the interpretation of the
Correct.
execution of the
Yeah.
laws that changes based on who is in the federal office.
Right.
And so there was new guidance that came out, which changed how we as schools implement the Title IX legislation. The legislation itself did not change.
Didn't change.
It's the guidance related to our expectations around implementation that shifted, that have different requirements, and the balance of power in a scenario where sexual assault or harassment is in question, the balance of power shifted there with the federal administration shift. Will it shift back? That's to be determined. Don't know. But right now, what we're dealing with is a shift in the balance of power, and our ability to work within that has shifted in the last 2 years. Basically, I think it went into effect last July.
No, it's before
You're right.
that.
It was, yeah,
Now, the nice part is they call it Dear Colleagues letters when they change all the rules.
Yeah.
yeah, great.
When you're inviting the attorney, that's the first meeting after the elections.
Yeah.
We will have some reorganization administration meeting to do first.
True. Yeah.
So
That was my concern.
Yeah.
That wasn't my only concern with doing it with that, on that one, is that we do need to reorganize the board.
I mean, you could change
I
the
mean,
13th to the 15th if you wanted.
you can still do that. You
Yeah.
can still do it at the beginning of the meeting. I mean, it doesn't have to take an exorbitant amount of
Right.
time. Yeah,
Little rough,
reorganize, yeah. I'm
little
just
rough
saying,
starting people off with that, though.
I sort of pay the attorney to be there at 6 and we're not using the attorney until 6:30.
Yeah.
That's my.
Welcome to the board.
Yeah. This is
I'm
typical.
right in.
Shelley has her hand up.
Shelley.
Shelley has her hand up.
Oh, Shelley?
I just want to make sure that Joe and other members of the board are aware that on some levels, there's things that can't be in place, but on other levels, I think Corey and her team at that school are trying to address this as much as they can and as quickly as they can. And I think, without getting into too many details, but I think Corey has a plan. She has a system. And I really think, the rest of the year, this is going to be a priority for her and her team. And I think they're doing a great job trying to work within the realm that they have to work in. And I just commend her and her team for really spending a lot more time on this than they probably should have to. So.
Yep.
Okay.
All right, so we'll take it up at the.
Yeah.
at the-
And as I reach out, I'll find out in terms of what they can chat about and share that out with y'all.
All right,
Thank you.
and do we think that doing like a Survey Monkey thing to get information from the public before that meeting makes sense?
Sure.
I think.
Could even be, we could also have questions that you might have,
Yeah,
that we can then ask the attorney to address so that people know. So we can all work on it Thursday or the following
Already have it
Thursday.
drafted.
Oh, nice.
That, I mean. Shelley mentioned we do have a plan, like we are addressing this at least in our middle school. So, yeah, I already have questions, drafted because we want to survey not only the, families, but also students and staff, because we do have climate and culture issues, and just our learning environment has shifted so drastically in the last 4 years. That, our kids have shifted, but our structures haven't. And so we need to have the adults and the structures and the systems and everything else catch up to the kids' shifts and the societal shifts that we're dealing with. And so it's just a matter of getting it out. I was working with our tech department today. Everybody was on vacation last week, so today people keep referencing Survey Monkey. I was told we can't use Survey Monkey, so we're using a different platform. So we'll get that out to folks. The goal is early next week that will go out to people, so then we'll have an opportunity to gather that feedback with enough time to have it for the next iteration. We have an early release day on March 10th. I believe it's March 10th. All of our PD time in the middle school this year has been and continues to be focused on behavior, climate, culture, and gathering the information from the various stakeholders so that we can understand what specifically we need to address. So this is teed up and ready to go. We need the feedback to the 10th anyway to do what we're doing internally. So we'll have that available for the board.
Have we used Survey Monkey in the past? I just bring it up because I've used it on a broadband committee, and you only get 40 responses for free. They cut you off at 40, so if you want more than 40.
It's a
you gotta
privacy
buy it.
agreement that they don't have with Home Mountain. That's the
Oh,
issue with.
So I was just saying, if you use the free version, you
Yeah,
only
we
get
use-
40
We use
responses.
we use Google
Okay,
Forms.
I just wanted to bring that up.
But will the survey just go out to the Charlestown attendance area and not the other attendants?
I was only trying to fix my problem right now. Also, I'm happy to share it with my
Maybe your
colleagues in the other
administration.
attendance areas.
Yeah,
They-
we are meeting Thursday.
They can send it out. I think, there are other longer term reasons why I want this data for Charlestown specifically. So I think, we can figure out a way for them to get it out to their people. And then just aggregate it at on the back end.
Good. Maybe we can just get a copy of the survey too, so that we can just look at the questions.
Yeah.
Not to edit it, just to know what's going on. So
And
if
we
we
have to follow the state law regarding surveys.
Yeah.
As an FYI, so if you think that I should have included something that I didn't, it's because it would have been illegal to do that, and I tell Brendan I won't get him in legal trouble.
I'm not editing it, it's just fun.
Yeah, not intentionally. That's a pretty important.
Yeah, I've just asked questions by colleagues who have children in the attendance areas, and they're always asking me, what's this survey? I'm like, what? You know, I haven't seen the survey, so I'd like to just have a copy.
Yeah, I'm happy to do that,
And
yeah.
not edit it, just to know what's being asked.
So you're gonna talk about it at it.
Yeah, we'll bring it up at admin on Thursday or clarify.
All right, we'll figure it out. Okay,
Got it.
anything else on that? I can't see their hands. I don't know where I'm supposed to look to see their hands, so. Give me a signal if one of their hands are up, okay? Thank you. All right. I'm gonna move on to new business then. The first thing on new business is, the Charlestown attendance area, what? Oh,
You have another visitor.
oh, we have another visitor. I'm sorry. I'm ever so sorry. Second visitor, sorry, you weren't listed on here.
Oh.
Oh, no, she is.
Yeah, you're in
You
there.
are on there.
Thank you.
You're on the
Oh.
agenda.
You're on the agenda.
Oh, okay.
You have a
that's good.
designated time.
Okay, so, staying with the Charlestown attendance area, reconfiguration presentation.
Good evening. As many know, there's been a lot of discussion within Charlestown attendance area about reconfiguration. It has been discussed at site base, it's been discussed at open door policies in the morning, busing. It's been discussed a lot. And honestly, we have not made a whole lot of headway in the past couple of years. This year with some new guidance from the board and some looking at the articles of agreement, there's been re-energized discussion on this topic. With that said, there's a lot of emotion that comes with some change. And with that, we have put it out to staff. We are looking at putting it out to the community, and we have a presentation that we have just gathered some information that from our staff members and wanted to share it with you tonight. So Corey was instrumental in putting this together, so I'll let her. You are so talkative right now.
Sure. So, currently we have North Charlestown Community School. We have grades 1 through 5 there. We have Charlestown Primary School with grades pre-K through 5 and Charlestown Middle with grades 6 through 8. We have about 130 something kids at Charlestown Middle School, 63-ish kids at North Charlestown, and
220 at Charlestown. Primary.
yes. Part of the timing of this, as Chris mentioned, is tied to budget discussions. And when the budget committee asked for a reduction of 2 positions in each attendance area, the way to achieve that in the Charlestown attendance area that has the most educational value for children is to reconfigure. And so reconfiguration allows all of the same grade level, so all of 4th grade, to be under one roof in Charlestown. Right now, that's not the scenario. So we've had some discussions internally with staff. We need to, if and how we move forward with this, we need to really actively have discussions with families and community. But we did survey staff to just gather pros and cons to 3 potential reconfiguration models. So the first model would put preschool up at North Charlestown Community School. Currently, the articles of agreement require us to operate a school at North Charlestown. And so we would have preschool there. It would provide room at North Charlestown for other potential district programs. I know special education and related services could be there with different things. And so just it provides some options. We would put grades K through 4 at Charlestown Primary, and then the middle school would house grades 5 through 8. So that's an option. These are not hierarchical or, in preference order in any way at this moment. They're just 3 different potential options.
How many students are in pre-K and how many classes are there?
So we have 2 pre-K classes, morning and an afternoon, and approximately 15 in each.
So these are some pros that the staff generated. I'm not gonna read these all because you have these in front of you. And then for each of these options, there's pros and cons. Option 2 would put 3 and 4 at North Charlestown. It would put pre-K to 2 at Charlestown Primary and grades 5 through 8 at Charlestown Middle. And none of these options, again, pros and cons for option 2, none of these options require for next year, these would all be for next year, and none of them would require construction of any kind for next year. It's just in, thinking about what is the educational best option for students first, staff second, community and families third, honestly. And option 3 would have North Charlestown with grades 4 and 5. CPS would be grades pre-K through 3, and CMS, the middle school, would be as it is status quo with grades 6 through 8. So there's 3 different potential shifts that could happen. When asking staff, their thoughts, they listed pros and cons. They were not explicitly asked to pick their favorite. It really was feedback gathering of what are all the pros, what are the cons, what have we missed is essentially what we were trying to answer. What did we miss with these potential options?
So with that, when you go through the pros and cons of the 3 options, in our opinion, there's 2 that stand out as kind of the most pros with the least amount of cons. And that is option 1, which is pre-K up at North. Grades K through 3, grades K through 4 at CPS. And then the middle school housing 5 through 8. And then option 3, which is pre-K through 3 at CPS, 4 and 5 at NCCS, and then middle school stay the same, which would be 6th, 7th, and 8th. The reason we've said this, there's a couple physical attributes of each school that really play into what can be offered at that school. For example, North Charlestown does not have a gym. CPS and CMS does have a gym. Transportation has been discussed pretty extensively and how that would look within this model or any of these models. So there are benefits and cons to those that you can read through it at a later time.
Can you elaborate on transportation? How?
So transportation, it would have to be in talking with the transportation director, it would have to be a point of contact situation in which we don't have enough buses to do a run for, say, North Charlestown, CPS and CMS to all have individual buses going to, they would all go all over Charlestown, pick up all the students and then drop them off at each school. It would increase bus time, it would increase a lot of things. So the plan would be similar to Walpole, is you would have to have a point of contact. So say maybe it's the middle school. They all get bused to the middle school. If you're whatever's at North gets on a different bus, goes up to that school, then would have to get out a few minutes early to make it back to CMS and disperse out from there. So it's not changing a whole lot, it just increases bus times a little bit. what gives us the most flexibility, honestly, is option one with transportation. Because pre-K has a little less regulations when it comes to time. And being a midday run anyways, it may lend itself more naturally to have it kind of standalone in another building. It's almost standalone in Charlestown Primary School or any school, because they run on such a different schedule than any of the elementary schools. But so going into next steps,
Let me go back.
I'm sorry.
We didn't touch on this. There are some pros and cons to just restructuring in general. So doesn't matter which option you pick. Some of the pros are more collaboration for grade level staff at each grade level. So all of our fourth grade teachers, like I mentioned, could be under the same roof, being able to collaborate with each other for grade level content. Right now, we don't have that because we have one fourth grade teacher at North, and then we have the other fourth grade teachers at CPS. All students in a grade at one building. So then there are more opportunities to shift homerooms. You know, we talked earlier about behavioral concerns that we are seeing in the middle school, for instance. If you have 3 sections of a grade instead of only 2 sections, that gives you one more opportunity to move kids around to better have better matches between staff and students and students and students. Potentially better models for interventions and specialized instruction, because now we're concentrated more in one spot. So we, you know, instead of having one kid at a certain reading level and 2 kids in another grade level in another building at that same reading level, now maybe they're all under one roof, and the interventionists that we have can service a more concentrated population of students at one time, allowing greater flexibility for our interventionists to see potentially more students overall. And then potentially better alignment of curriculum and fidelity of programs, because they're, you know, all of a grade level is under one roof. And so you can see the curriculum under that roof, instead of having, for instance, I'm just continuing to use fourth grade as an example. You know, Chris monitors for fourth grade at CPS. I pretend to monitor fourth grade at North Charlestown. And so we may or may not be on the same page with things there. Cons, though, you know, we are looking at larger class sizes across the attendance area. We will have staff, students, and families transition. Some of the options have greater number of transitions than the other options, particularly long-term, but it is considerable transition that is not currently in the plan for these folks. Lack of transparency of plans with the family and community. Our staff are very well aware now of what is potentially on the table for next year, but I don't believe our families and our community really are. You know, we've had the conversations around restructuring at the board table and at site-based, but the board hasn't had those broader conversations across the community with families. Concerns about not enough time to plan for a restructuring for next year. The decision seems rushed to some, and also concerned about potentially needing to reconfigure again if North Charlestown is to close.
Ignore the
Interesting timing on that, I'm just gonna say. So those are the sort of in general, the pros and cons to the concept of restructuring.
So with that, we've come up with a couple next steps, and the first one was to present tonight. Really, as you know, we've had these discussions in a kind of a vacuum right now. We need to get this information out to parents. This information that we've gathered was just from staff. So our goal is to release a survey to the Charlestown attendance area, the community at large, and hopefully get some good feedback. The survey would, in our opinion, there's a lot on the table, especially when you look at the past 5 years and the discussions among the past 5 years. trying to limit it down to a few options or even 2 options may provide a little bit more guidance than just throwing out 3 or having several on there for them to not choose from, but do pros and cons. So we would continue with the same survey. This is not asking what are we going with? This is what are the pros and cons of each of these options? And we're looking at doing option 1 and option 3 to the community and really diving deeper into those 2 options as potential reconfiguration for next year. We also thought on the survey, which did not go out to staff, but teasing out a little bit on kind of the finer points of reconfiguration and how are they ready? And what are we forgetting as we move through this process? So that would be an additional question that would be adding to this survey. Of course, we haven't crafted that quite yet, but something along that line. And then ultimately, we'd be coming back to the board in a future conversation about what would it look like once we have all this information.
I need to be very clear though with the timeline that we're facing. So we have the vote on the 14th. If it's kind of like keeping the reconfiguration conversation somewhat separate from the budget conversation, but in some ways it's directly tied to the budget conversation. If we end up with the proposed budget, we are forced to reconfigure. Let's just be very honest about that and very transparent about that. And if that's the scenario, that's March 14th. We need to get contracts out before April 15th. We are required by state law to notify anybody by April 15th if they are not returning to us. So that's a very short time frame for turnaround. So it's not like we do this survey, we get to talk about it in a meeting, we get to come back with the next meeting, talk about it again. Like, you need to come prepared to make a decision about how we are proceeding forward, because we will not have the time in the meantime to make these transitions and make these shifts. That's not fair to our families, our staff, or our students. And so it is a pretty quick turnaround potentially that we're facing here. And so it would be important for us, as we are getting the survey out in the next couple of days, to think about what is the message that you as a board are putting out to folks, because that needs to come from you, not to be too directive, but that needs to come from you. And then what else do we need to ask our families and our community members that will help inform you as a board in making such decisions?
Would it be possible to, it says to provide update on survey results to the school board on the 27th? Would it be possible to move that up to the survey results on when we're at our workshop?
The 13th.
The 13th?
Well, the workshop's 27th.
Well, the
but
workshop,
regular board
yeah,
meeting.
at a regular board meeting?
So I think that's, if this is not, yes, I think you can.
Yeah.
You're not gonna have all the information at that point, but it's going to, the pros and cons, you will have the information from the survey as a starting point of future discussions.
Well, they may be able to make, so if you get the information back on the 8th and you're able to compile whatever you can, at least that way the board has the possibility of making a decision. So that when the vote happens, regardless, it can either be if X, then Y,
Exactly.
or it can be, this is what we're doing. So,
You can choose to move forward with a restructure
Regardless.
of whatever the vote is.
Right.
That's an option for sure. So yes, I like the if X then Y. We just know based on either the board decision on the 13th, or we know based on the outcome of a vote, how we're moving forward, because there is not necessarily the time to come off.
Yeah, I think that, like you're saying, we have that date, that April date looming ahead of us. So I think that the sooner we can start looking at it. Yes.
I'm just looking at articles of agreement, and articles of agreement say if the change fails, the articles say that before future action in transferring another grade from one town to another be taken, meetings must be held in the town concerned to transfer. Well, they're not,
We're
they're
not
listed
transferring,
here,
we're
they're
not
not really
transferring
towns,
anybody.
but they are listed here as separate towns. So does that not apply?
I thought it was all about tuition. When you transfer someone from Charlestown to Alsted, there's a tuition cost involved.
What about
So
from
I
North
think that-
Charlestown to Charlestown?
No.
There's
So you
nothing,
don't-
you're all the
Yeah,
same
they're all
place.
the same.
Jamie also has her hand up.
Jamie,
You're correct. It's all the same attendance area. So no, I had a couple of questions for Chris and Corey. What's the total number of amount of positions you're looking at adjusting, and do they vary between option 1 and option 3?
No, the total position count is 2 reductions and does not vary between options.
Okay, and we have no open teaching positions that aren't filled right now?
I think what is fair to say is we do have 1 open teaching position that's not filled right now. That one will be filled next year. We have 2 positions that will be reduced. What I think there's a possibility that we will have to go through an official RIF process, but there's the strong likelihood that no currently employed individual would actually lose a position.
Okay, thank you. That's what I was trying to get to.
Yeah.
Okay, and we don't know about any retirements at this point?
Not at all.
I'm not facing any in my.
We don't have any retirements in the CAA right now.
Okay, all right, thank you.
So we'll adjust that timeline and report back the 13th.
So not bullet item number 1. That's not me, that's somebody else. So who's on that one? Because I don't want that to get lost. But
What is that?
We gave you a day.
Oh, God.
I think the point being that we have had no communication to the Charlestown attendance area from the board saying, here's some stuff being discussed and talked about, and so, how do we want to handle that? Let me phrase it that
So
way.
why can't that discussionary letter, if you will, or memorandum from the school board, why can't that accompany the survey when it opens?
Certainly
It
can,
Okay, so that would be March 1 is what your goal is.
which is in 2 days.
Yep, I understand.
Madam
Okey-dokey.
Chair, would you like me to try to draft a letter
I would love that.
and then send it to you and the rest of the board and you
Yeah,
can
Sarah.
decide what you'd like?
I have a
Yes.
comment. The way I thought that things would play out after the vote was that once a vote was taken, then we would know what we have to work with, right? Either the proposed budget or the default budget. I in no way, shape or form assumed that the administration would do all the proposed cuts that the budget committee suggested. Those are suggestions. My thought process was that if the proposed budget gets passed, that all of you administrators would go back to the drawing board and figure out how you can run your attendance areas the way you're running them now with less money. That's how I thought it would play out. Now, if you're gonna reconfigure, don't look at me as a board to pick an option. I'm gonna approve whatever you're gonna recommend, because I'm not an educator. I don't know what is the best option for our kids. But I assume that you do. And you're gonna recommend to the board an option for us to either approve, or if the rest of the board feels comfortable telling them what to do. I certainly don't. So I think that there's money that could be cut that doesn't, you're right, the timeline is way too quick to do anything, I think, for next year. So if that means that you get rid of sports, you pay to play, you get rid of transportation, I don't know, there's a host of things that you might be able to do. And maybe not, maybe this is it, you have to reconfigure, boom.
Oh, I'm sorry. Yeah.
I agree with you on a lot of those points. I think that the recommendation that comes from the administration is going to be the most sound recommendation. But I want to say that I'm incredibly impressed and I respect the work that has gone into these configurations. I see that there's a significant amount of attention paid to what is the most educationally sound opportunity for our kids. And from what I've heard and what I read in the pros and cons, it is most educationally sound to reconfigure. Whether or not we save money is.
Well, that's the thing. I would want to reconfigure for educational purposes, not money purposes.
And that's why you have a pros and cons list versus,
So if you feel that there's a better option than what you're doing right now to educate the students in Charlestown, that's the one that we should be pursuing and figure out how we're gonna fund it.
Yeah.
I think it's important. to
And,
get
you know, there's gonna be some hard truths down the road. Student population's going down. There's gonna be a loss of jobs. It's just not the never-ending employment pool, you know, unfortunately.
I think that the concept of getting the input from the parent, you know, from the community is really important. So that I think the survey is really important. I think it's sounding as if, from my conversations with the new superintendent, it goes along with the kinds of concepts that he's hoping for of, you know, making things be, educationally sound and fiscally responsible at the same time. And so, from the two options that you're kind of campaigning the most do seem to be from an educator standpoint. I am an educator. Those do seem to be very educationally sound, and I would really like. I think it's very important when we're doing these things, as you are pointing out, that we get the input from the community so that they know what's going on. I have done a similar thing of restructuring how the schools functioned and what schools took what kids in a similar way when I was working over in Springfield, and it was difficult, but we were able to pass it through the community because it was educationally sound, and it was educationally sound to have the grades together. So I think that you know, getting input from the community, getting the community on board so that they are understanding the reasons why and what, you know, that this is going to be better for their children is an important piece, and letting them have a voice.
Oh, sorry, Jamie also had.
I'm gonna give you first and then Jamie. Jamie, just a second. Kevin first.
So with that in mind, I would like for us to still consider holding hearings in the Charlestown attendance area to allow families the opportunity to face to talk to us, and not just through emails and surveys. So I know that kind of puts the timeline, makes it tough on the timeline, but I would still like for us to do that.
And have a public forum.
Yeah.
Okay. Figure out how we do that. Jamie.
Yeah, I don't disagree with that. I think that's a great idea. I think we could probably do that rather quickly. I think it's interesting what Andy said as well. I think this is an amazing idea. It's something that, you know, Walpole embarked on quite a few years back, and it wasn't easy. There were challenges. And so at the end of the day, Andy is correct in that no matter what budget passes, you know, if the way it is right now is the best way, then we as a board can make that decision to move funding in order to take care of that. But if it's not the best way, I think it provides everybody with an opportunity to perhaps make things better, albeit difficult at first, because change is hard. So yeah, it's a great presentation. And I think that when we send the information out to the families, you know, we need to let them know that regardless of the way the vote goes, we need to do what's in the best interest of the children, right? So thank you.
Okay. Am I missing any hands? Oh, right.
I could just.
But you know, Sarah and Kevin, you know, the idea of holding rotating board meetings in different attendance areas is to make the point that we're gonna come to that community and for them to come to us and speak. And rarely, when we hold board meetings in other towns, does anybody come out. I mean, at the last one in Walpole, they did because they had an interest, you know.
And you see that throughout all committees, site-based, there's a topic that is.
Sure. Yeah.
Say more controversial, I guess, then you see a lot more turnout
Yeah.
than just our standard. Day-to-day meetings.
I think we get turnout on this.
Yeah, I just don't wanna feel like a dummy and not have an answer for anything,
Mhm.
you know.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Right. Community activities.
Thank you. Brendan was giving me the eye before, so.
That was my question of if you wanted to see if I could push you up further.
Oh, yeah, you.
Clearly, you don't know what my eyes are saying.
Guys, I'm Alice Cable. I'm the school community liaison. I'm gonna give you this one. I'm just gonna talk for a couple minutes about.
Why don't you give me that pile and you can.
Oh, that's
talk and
fantastic.
I'll pass those out.
Thank you. And I have a second stack that I'm gonna have you pass around.
Get out of my
And then
chair.
if we have spares, I'll send them over to this table over here. But, so my role is new for the district, the school community liaison. I started back in August, like the other new staff. And because it's a new role, we wanted to start with what are the needs for our district? Like, we assume that we have a lot of them, right? But what does that actually mean? So speaking of surveys, we did a Google form with secretaries, school counselors, with principals, with nurses, and kind of made the rounds, saying, what do you think are the most pressing needs in our district? And you should see those survey results as you flip through. And if you were to make a guess, you'd probably be right that the number one most pressing need in our district that we saw is mental health access, right? So a lot of these things that we talked about at Charlestown Middle School, mental health causes and effects. And the second largest need that we were seeing was food access. So the additional part of your packet includes some data of, all right, if that's what we're seeing, is there data to back it up? And yes, it's true. So I'm talking kind of quickly because I know we've got a lot of things going on tonight. But what I want to impress to you is this community activities fair actually comes from this survey of what the community, what our district need is to support mental health. The idea for the community activities fair actually came from one of our district mental health clinicians, along with our recreational therapist, along with one of our special needs teachers. And we were talking about how students, as well as their parents, need opportunities to build relationships, especially after the last couple of years. Dr. Minahan's been great about the Coming to the Mountain initiative, which is really speaking to this, is trying to rebuild those community connections after we've been sitting in our houses for a really long time. So that's reason number one, is we're creating social and recreational opportunities, which is a protective factor for mental health. The second protective factor for mental health that we're addressing is concrete supports. So we're having approximately 50 exhibitors at the events that was going to be scheduled for tomorrow. Unfortunately, we're supposed to be getting a blizzard tomorrow evening. Like we don't know what's going to happen, but we really want the public to attend because there's no point in a community activities fair with just the exhibitors without the families. So this is going to actually be on March 8th. The second handout you should have is about a sampling of who's attending, along with the updated date. It's going to be here at the high school, and we're getting really great feedback from all the exhibitors that we've reached out to. We actually invited over 100 that just either here in our 5-town footprint or at county headquarters in Claremont and Keene. And we also forgot some. over 100 that we invited, and we forgot some. So it's kind of cool to see how much there is in our footprint. And I think that's probably all I have to say for you in my rapid fire speaking. Do you have any questions for me?
This is wonderful. This is a great idea. I'm gonna be in Utah on the 8th, but but I think that the idea of giving people a chance to see what is out there to bring us together, to make us a full community, I think is a really good.
And in some of the marketing pieces that I've tried to give to the families, to give to the secretaries, to give to the families, for the community supports, I want them to think about, what does that organization do? Could this help your neighbor? So that way they don't feel shy about seeing if it can help them, right? This is something that somebody you might know could use someday. Or have you ever driven past that place and wondered what they do? Some additional incentives for people to attend include free popcorn, giveaways, door prizes, scavenger hunts. I think fire department is going to come and bring some vehicles. There will be lots of activities, pens, all kinds of good stuff. I think that the Sullivan County health prevention department is going to bring their x-ray gun. So if you have hand-me-downs, you can like have that scanned to see if it has lead in it. So it's going to be a great time.
Oh, that's very good.
Shelley did have her hand up.
All right, Shelley.
Hi.
Shelley?
I had the great pleasure of meeting Alice. She came to a select board meeting in Charlestown, and just want to say that I think this activity is great and really appreciate all her work. And I think she's a great resource for the district.
Second that. All right, any other questions?
Yes.
I just one correction, the blizzard's supposed to start tonight.
One inch tonight, 3 inches tomorrow.
Yeah.
Well,
That's the correction I can handle.
all right, K2 literacy presentation.
Yes. All right, you ready? We are very excited.
I am looking up the weather there.
So we are, my name is Krista Wilson. I'm the Director of Curriculum Instruction Assessment. Everybody else here knows me. So we are very excited, a little nervous, but very excited. You got a pretty large packet from me. It actually contains K4, or actually K5 stuff. But we're really going to focus on K2 today. We're kind of approaching this from the perspective of like a lesson that a teacher might do for you. So we gave you some resources. We gave you a little bit of homework, about 8 minutes of a video that we wanted you to watch. So hopefully you did that. If you didn't, that's okay. We'll allow you to make that homework up. We'd like to be able to come back a couple of different times. Because with every lesson, you need to kind of break that down, give you a little bit of information, digest that information, then move on to the next part. We're gonna let the experts take over, and then we'll answer some questions for you. Okay, so I'd like to introduce you. I did it in paper, but this is Sarah Fisher. She's in the Alstead attendance area. This is Natasha Etzweiler. She's in the Walpole attendance area. And this is Sydney Ditz. She's in the Charleston attendance area. Any questions before we start? All right, ladies, you're on.
First, I talk really fast when I'm nervous, so I apologize. By now, you've hopefully heard this and seen the term science of reading and have some idea of what it means. But to make sure that we're all on the same page before we get going, and make sure we have a shared understanding of that term, I'm going to give you just a quick definition of the term science of reading. So when we say science of reading, what we're referring to is the body of research that tells us how to best teach students to read. Some of the research dates back many years, and the body of research continues to grow. The research tells us that the most effective way to teach reading is through teaching structured literacy. This means we teach students in an explicit, direct, multisensory, and systematic way. We know from the research that all students benefit from structured literacy, and for many students, it is absolutely necessary for them to learn to read. A small caveat as we move forward, there's a lot of information that we could provide to you, and it's hard to condense it into a brief presentation. The information we gave you ahead of time, as well as these few brief moments this evening, will give you a very broad overview, but there are many details and nuances that we just don't have time to cover this evening. We know you may have questions as we go, but we hope to have some time at the end. So if you can hold them, that will help us feel a little calmer. So, at this point, I'm going to hand it over to Susan for a minute.
All right, so research supports that there are two parts to this process of reading. And this is the simple view of reading, which you may have seen in the bit of information that Kristen sent you. So it states that word recognition, so a child's ability to decode a word, multiplied by language comprehension, or their ability to understand what that word means, equals that reading comprehension. And just like in math, if there's a 0 on one side of the X, then your reading comprehension at the end of the equal sign is also going to be 0. So if a student has a deficit in word recognition, their reading ability or reading comprehension will still be 0. Or vice versa, if they have a 0 in language comprehension, they're also going to have a 0 in reading comprehension, whether or not their abilities in the other area. To delve further into how word recognition and language comprehension tie into each other a little bit more in depth, Natasha is going to talk about Scarborough's road.
So the simple view of reading gives us a very broad understanding of the two components required to accomplish reading comprehension. However, each of those parts has many smaller pieces involved, and Kristen's holding up my beautiful little visual for me. So in 2001, Hollis Scarborough first published the reading rope, which you saw in the documents and which Kristen is holding up for us right now. The rope breaks down the many components involved with the two pieces of the simple view of reading. So on the top of the rope, you will see the parts involved with language comprehension, and on the bottom where the foundation is, you will see the breakdown of what is included for word recognition. So this is word reading or decoding. The rope reminds us that teaching reading is actually not as simple as it may at first seem. All of these components need to be in place in order to establish reading comprehension. Basically, we need to teach students the sounds of language, what sounds the squiggles on the page are spelling, the meaning behind the words, and the rules that go along with our language.
So how do we get here? In the year 2000, there was a major government report that was released by the National Reading Panel, which assessed the effectiveness of how different approaches taught children to read. This panel was comprised of 14 major researchers in the field of reading research, educators and other professionals in the field. They found that the big 5 concepts that were at the core of every effective reading instruction were phonological awareness, phonics, fluency, vocabulary, and comprehension. We used these 5 concepts as the basis for our work. And to those concepts, we also added the concept of spelling and written expression. And now we're going to talk about each of those a little bit more. So to start with, we talk about phonological awareness. Phonological awareness encompasses an awareness of spoken language. Phonological awareness is practiced through speech only, not through letters and words. Of most importance is actually phonemic awareness, which is awareness of individual speech sounds. And why this is really important is it builds the cognitive foundation for reading in the brain. Okay, I have notes that say take a deep breath here. The way that we help students work on this is actually all the schools in the district use integrity. And so it is little activities that they do within classes. This is done through kindergarten and 1st and 2nd grade each day for like 10 or 15 minutes. And it gets kids to listen to words and think about things like onset and rhyme, like the first sound and then the rest of the word, to think about what words rhyme, to think about, can they manipulate the sounds in a word, like take away the and add a loop. What word is it? Like, so that is phonological awareness. So this is something that is across the district, and many teachers say that they've seen a lot of increased awareness in their students' knowledge of sounds because of using this over the last 2 years. I'm turning it over to Natasha to talk about.
Can you do me one favor? We talked about, can you give us a short, like snippet of a lesson?
Yeah, you mean more than I just did?
Yes.
Okay. All right. So I have here,
Just so we can practice as a group.
okay. We'll do adding initial phonemes, which is just adding the first sound. All right, so I would say axe. Add w at the beginning. What's word?
Wax.
Okay, good job. Say amp. All right, add r to the beginning and get
Ramp.
You guys are great. Say ant.
Ant.
At the beginning.
Ant.
Yeah, so it's really fast. It's very fast paced. You do a whole bunch of different things like that. It's fun. The kids get into it and they kind of like enjoy it. I call it wordplay. They get really good.
Thank you.
So phonics, spelling, and decodable readers is next. One important thing to really remember is that the letters on the page are representing the words that we speak. It's a nuanced thing, but it's an important piece to remember. Phonics and spelling go hand in hand in that they're both dealing with sound symbol correspondences. Reading words and spelling them are related but opposite skills. They do support one another, but a student may be able to read a word, but not necessarily spell it correctly. You've probably seen that happen in your life. They can read it, but have no idea how to spell it. However, it's more likely that if a student can spell a word, they can also then read it. We teach phonics and spelling together so that we work on reading and spelling words with the same patterns and the same sound symbol correspondences. Mine says pause. For phonics, last year and this year, we've been working on implementing foundations consistently across the district. If you've been in our classrooms, you've probably seen cards that look like this or this. And you hear students say things like TH, thumb. So this is phonics. This is how we spell the sound and what letters then, if we see this on a page, we read it as. And this one, I'll give you a little deeper. Sometimes it's, and sometimes it's good. So it can be a voiced or an unvoiced sound. So we've got showing that. This is also when we need to talk briefly. Nope, I skipped a line. We use foundations to support decoding, which is reading, and spelling in our classroom. And we have it for maybe pre-K through 3.
Okay. Oh,
Foundation.
yeah.
Should be.
Yeah. We have some. Okay, this is also when we need to talk briefly about decodable readers. So decodables allow students to further practice the phonics skills that we're teaching them. So if we're working on words with TH, we want them to read words, sentences, and stories that have that pattern, as well as any other previously taught patterns. We want them to be confident in what they're reading so that we eliminate guessing at words. Now it says brief. We do not currently have a consistent source of decodable readers across the district. Foundations does not include decodables, and our kind of outdated core reading programs do not provide sufficient high quality or effective decodable readers to support our phonics instruction. Right now, many of us are supplementing as best we can. In Walpole, I use decodables that look like this. So I'll pass them around if you want to look at them. So I looked for which of my decodables have the TH digraph in them. And these are some examples. Pass them around.
Can you tell us what a digraph is?
A digraph is 2 letters that spell one sound. So we don't say t, we say that it spells an independent.
Thank you.
Sorry.
Not everybody knows what a digraph.
Yes. So those are some of the decodable readers that I use. I think some of them are used in the other attendance areas, but we don't have consistency across the district.
So the 2 the two instructional programs that we were looking at, to implement this year did have decodables in them. And then we were, looking, deeper at those this year. We did pull that out of the budget this year. We were gonna implement that next year, but we're going to, use ESSER funds to purchase decodables for next year.
So then I'm going to speak about fluency. And the concept of fluency includes not just the reading rate, but also accuracy, expression, and phrasing. So fluency is important because it shows that a student is moving past just letter by letter decoding or reading. A student's ability to use phrasing in their reading shows a progressing comprehension of the material. We want increases in fluency because that allows the students to shift kind of their cognitive load from thinking about each individual word to thinking about the material. We measure fluency through timed readings that capture the words correct per minute and the accuracy. So my show and tell for this is in each of the attendance areas, we do DIBBLES, which is the dynamic indicators of basic early literacy skills. I had that written down, but I took it away. Okay, but I have just a generic one that I use with a student here. I ask them to read for 1 minute, and I'm checking how many words are they able to read correctly during that time. And we do checks with students. We do a benchmark 3 times a year, and then oftentimes with students that we work with more closely, we do progress monitoring where we do this more often. Let's see. So currently we use measures like this to measure student fluency, and we keep track of that over the course of the year. And then I'm going to turn it over to Natasha to talk about vocabulary comprehension.
So the goal of reading is comprehension. We read in order to understand, either to learn new information or for entertainment. Many factors go into comprehension, including vocabulary and background knowledge. Students learn many vocabulary words through oral language as well as through continued reading, but we also need to explicitly teach the meaning of some of our especially high utility words. Teaching vocabulary can be complicated because our students arrive at school with a wide variety of language experiences. So some students have a larger vocabulary and more background knowledge than others do. We need to approach vocabulary and comprehension instruction in the same way that we approach the other components of reading instruction. We want to teach it explicitly and systematically in a way that eliminates guessing or confusion. Vocabulary and comprehension are usually included in a core reading program. Words are hard this evening. It's typically included in a core reading program. Right now, we're using several different ones across the district, so there's a little bit of difference between vocabulary and background knowledge and comprehension that's being taught in the different areas.
And finally, we're talking about written expression, which I explained that we added that component because we understand that writing and reading can't be separated totally. They're intertwined. And so when we examined the concept of written expression, we looked at everything from writing a single sentence to full paragraphs to think about what is expected at each grade level. When we were coming up with the grade level competencies for written expression, we actually drew heavily on the work that was done by Fall Mountain District teachers. They had previously created K-8 writing competencies, and we used that work to influence our own. And we know that systematic, explicit writing instruction that supports and is aligned with reading instruction actually creates the strongest readers that we can possibly get. Currently across the Fall Mountain District, there's no consistent resource that's being used to teach writing, written expression of writing. There's a wide range of materials being used, and one of our literacy goals is to research and implement a district-wide writing instruction program. Yes, so let's bring it over to you.
So we talked fast. We know we included a lot of information in a very short amount of time. And we thank you for sticking with us as we presented what can be a confusing and a large amounts of information. Do you have any questions right now? Yeah.
One question. Well, two. Kristen, we have a curriculum coordinator. Why are they different across the district, the resources, and why are the programs not the same?
So when I came on board, we were using different core reading programs. We had just implemented a core math program. And then we were going to be looking into a core reading program. And that was supposed to start in the spring of 2020, and the pandemic hit. And everything got put on the wayside. And so and that was part of what I wrote into the letter. I pulled the reading specialists together in the fall of 2020. It was at the beginning of that, and we started to have some conversations, and then it was in the fall of 21 that we started working on the K2 literacy plan and started looking at instructional resources to adopt for this year. But then we got tabled. And so then we pulled the committee together to adopt something, and then I put it into the budget and it got cut from the budget. So that's where we are right now.
So a follow-up question, and maybe Superintendent or Mary, so ESSER funds, can they be used to buy entire programs
Correct.
to go across the district?
Yep, they could for learning loss. And probably they could fit in other areas too. The question when it came up in the fall was lack of, so if we go back to this conversation we're having about Charlestown, a lack of clarity and inclusiveness, probably partly due to the pandemic, not everyone was around. What's going to make a program successful is if there's buy-in from the teachers and the staff. And so we said, let's step back from that. Plus we were told to cut the $250,000. So we stepped back from that, and we've set up this so that they'll come periodically and talk to the board and give the board more information. And we're going to look at K2. Some, unfortunately, I don't know if you've noticed, but we're in some culture wars that have dragged education in. And some of that affects some of the core reading programs. The two that we've been looking at are Amplify, CK, LA, and what's the other one again?
Wit and Wisdom.
Wit and Wisdom. And there have been some brouhaha, especially about Wit and Wisdom. And so we wanted to make sure that as a board, you were knowledgeable, understanding of what's going on, and that our teachers had the opportunity to have buy-in. So doing it slow to do it right seems like a better approach than jumping in. I mean, we have the issue with is it the core math now that is like, we thought it was the best thing since sliced bread, and oddly enough, it isn't.
It's math and focus.
Yeah.
That's
so
another thing that we have to start to address.
Exactly. And so I think the key that we're trying to do is to be really thoughtful about it. And I appreciate them coming and talking to each of you, because my guess is you're leaving here with more knowledge than you started with. And
This is a great presentation.
Yeah.
But let's think about this.
All right, Andy.
There's slow.
Yeah.
And then there's snail's pace.
Yeah.
So since 1966, we've had 3 attendance areas.
Oh, yeah, that's a
filtering
different
to the high
issue
school.
though. Yeah.
So for I don't know how many years, we've been talking about everybody stepping in
Mhm.
on the same footing.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah, that's a different question. I
know,
answered
but
your
I'm
wrong
just saying.
question.
I will say this, I will say that, so one of the things that happened from the pandemic that was really beneficial for us was when the pandemic hit, we went remote. And we were hearing from our teachers that they were struggling. And so when we came back in August, we had, as an administrative team in that summer, we said, okay, we have to get grade level teachers together. So I set up instructional meetings and we said, okay, we need to identify what are the instructional priorities, because we were only going to be in school half the time with kids. And so I said, we're not going to teach a full year's worth of work. So let's identify what are those curricular priorities that we want to have. And so I met with every single group for reading, writing, and math. And I met with kindergarten through grade 5. And then the other principals took on the middle school and the high school, all of the other content areas. And all of the reading specialists met with the reading and writing groups with me. And when we were meeting with the reading groups, what came out of those meetings was teachers that were using Heggerty were having success. And so I said, okay, fine, I will buy Heggerty for everybody. And I did, and we implemented it. And we have seen success. Our iReady scores and even the MAP scores that we were using, we saw increases in our phonological awareness. And our phonemic awareness. So we're seeing increases in that. The other piece was where we were using foundations, we saw increases in phonics. So we're purchasing foundations for everybody across the district. And we sent a ton of teachers. I did a report in the fall for you and said how many teachers, I think it was like 23 teachers. We sent to foundations training. We wrote a grant activity. And I'm going to send more teachers this summer to foundations training. And we've seen increases in our iReady scores for that. So we're seeing growth and it's working. So, which is excellent, absolutely. So, I mean, some things came out of the pandemic that was good. We know that decodables are important to students. I mean, I can't thank Natasha and Sarah enough. My learning curve on reading, I'm a math person. My learning curve on reading and literacy has it's unbelievable. And even Sydney this year has helped me tremendously. 4 months. 4 months, but I've learned a lot from Sydney even already. So, but I mean, it's just incredible to me how much I've learned in the time that we've been working on this for the last 2 years. So, and so we talked about purchasing geodes, which is aligned with foundations. And so when teachers look at the geodes, and geodes is aligned with wit and wisdom. So if we're using foundations, teachers are going to be able to look at geodes and look at foundations and say like, oh, okay, in foundations, these are the decodables that go with this lesson in foundations. So that's going to be helpful as well. So.
Making progress. Come on.
Yeah, we're making progress. We definitely are. I mean, it feels very slow, but you know, we are definitely making progress. So, but we have to select a core reading program. So.
Thank you very much.
Yes.
I had just one question. I've always been a lousy speller, but I can read very well. I mean, I look at this word, phonological awareness, and I know that I'm looking at it now, so I know how to spell it. But when I walk away from this computer, I'm going to try and throw an A in there. What's wrong with me? I mean, just that one second. I know there's a lot more. Exactly. But I'm like, I know that. I'll spell that word wrong.
So I can't answer that. I can answer it like layman's terms, but the experts can really answer that. But what I've learned is that spelling, and so I'm going to say this incorrectly. So spelling and phonics.
I don't know where you're going there.
I'm pretty sure that spelling and phonics go hand in hand.
So when I say phonological, I'm saying it like with an A in it.
Yeah.
And there's no A, so I should say phonological.
So that's called a schwa, which is the vowel sound in an unaccented syllable. And I'm not going to tell you much more than that because it gets confusing. So if you think about the word wagon, we don't have a wagon that we
Right.
pull our kids around. We have a wagon.
But that's
So
English, that's the way we
Yeah.
pronounce
Yeah.
things,
Right.
or is it just New England? I don't.
So, but then we go into morphology, which is about the chunks of words that have meaning. So phono means sound. So if you
Right.
remember that phono
Edison
means
and all
sound,
that, yeah, I remember.
phonological, like committee lesson.
It's just, I don't know, that's just the way my brain works. But I read well, I think.
Because you're from Mass.
They're,
Places.
reading and spelling are related skills, but they're opposite. And they do support each other, but just because you can do one doesn't mean you can do the other.
I see.
You are not unusual.
Okay.
And both need to be taught.
And both
Yes.
needs to be taught, yeah.
Because that was,
But
that
need to be
was,
taught together. That's why it's really
Right,
important
aligned.
to teach them together.
Yes.
that was always my, I would do this, what you're presenting to kids in high school who couldn't read when they got them, and they learned to read. It was like magic. It was great. And they would be, we would throw vowels down the hall, because you can throw vowels, but you can't throw consonants, and and so, but I would get kids who couldn't spell at all, they couldn't read and they couldn't spell, and it had to be mixed together. They had to be combined, and getting that to be understood everywhere was difficult. I had a daughter who was very dyslexic, and I had many discussions about why she should be taught to spell as well as read. Yeah.
Thank you guys very much for.
Other questions?
Just a quickie, do you find it harder to teach kids to read these or to spell with everybody's computer, right? And everybody can whip out like this and misspell every word and it gets corrected for you automatically. So is that harder to teach spelling?
It's a battle at the middle school level and up because they do just type, but if we can get them younger.
Yeah.
It's.
With the younger ones, it's easier.
There's no spell check on pencil and paper, so
I know.
you make them write it and they
Still
eventually learn.
That is really why K2 is
Yeah.
so vital. Like, we really have to be really strong at K2 because that's where the building blocks are.
I also work a lot with assistive technology, and the spell check is having that is very important. And I really found that kids learn, they recognized the words as they were going along and they knew which words they always spelled. And so they would be like, oh, wait, that gets corrected. So they would go back and correct it.
Not one or the other, both and.
I also wanted to make sure we a lot of the information that Natasha, Sarah, and Sydney kind of talked about with the different categories, with phonological awareness, like the definitions are on these documents, but then we broke down each of the categories. So, and like I said at the start, we would love to be able to come back and talk further with you, and sort of go a little bit deeper with you. So as you're sort of reflecting on today, if you have more questions or you think of something else that you would like us to come back and talk a little bit more about, feel free to email me and Brendan, and I'll certainly reach out to Sydney, Sarah, and Natasha and get together with them and talk about what to come back with.
I'm very, I have to say that I'm extremely happy to see this is where we're going, because this is what science is saying is the way to go. And that they aren't going to get it by laying on by guessing, but looking at the picture and guessing which word it is. There's, just, they aren't going to get it by osmosis. So
And I just want to say that, I mean, Sydney was not with us last year, but Sarah and Natasha and they did extraordinary work last year, and Dottie Verso was with us last year. But the work that the three of them did with me last year was just extraordinary. And I don't think that we would be where we are this year if it was not for that. So I just want to say that publicly with you.
Thank you.
Yeah. Yeah, can't steal anything.
there's also a wonderful podcast that I have about this very topic. And so if anybody wants me to share that podcast with you.
That is good.
It's very, yeah, it's lengthy. Well, it's actually like four. It's like,
6, I think. The one
yeah,
that
6.
Oh, yeah. We're
Sold the
actually
story.
Sarah and
Sold the story, yeah.
Sarah and Natasha, thank you. I know your name. I swear. Sarah and Natasha are actually going to be offering professional development for our teachers. So anyone who has has listened to the podcast
Sold the story.
Yes, Sold the Story by Emily Hannaford. Anyone who has read, why do I keep saying that?
Well, it's kind of like.
Anyone that has listened to the podcast, they're gonna be offering a discussion, several discussion hours and professional developments. I can't.
Time.
Thank you. I'm just struggling with my words all of a sudden. And we're gonna give professional development credit so they can discuss that. So
That's great.
yeah,
That's great.
I don't know when that's happening, but soon.
I think that it's very important to have that discussion because there are teachers who've been teaching with like a whole language approach and those kinds of things that are need to get caught up with what the current research is and why it is that we're suggesting that phonics is an important thing.
Yeah.
It's not just because we're trying to shove it down anybody's throat. It's how your brain works. So
Yeah. They also did professional development last year for all K2 teachers on the science of reading.
Great.
And I thought the 7-minute video from the University of Florida was very good. And I also learned not to overload my washing machine because that was the ad that came on. So, I do two birds, one stone.
Yeah.
That was good.
Good.
That's great.
Thank you.
Great. Any questions that anybody has? Jamie, or any hands up? I can't see hands. Okay. All right. Committee discussion.
That's me.
That's you. That's why I'm looking at you.
Yeah, thanks. Just kind of a general discussion, or mostly just kind of foreshadowing, think about after the vote in March. We normally come together that first meeting on the 27th, which we may move this back. But we normally come back from that meeting, that first meeting after voting to provide committee assignments, to draw them out. And after talking to a couple of board members, and that's something Jamie said at our last meeting about getting stuff done by going to, working outside of this meeting. I'd like the board to start thinking about restructuring our committees. So they're not, my personal experience of being here almost a year now, I'm on the PD committee and the wellness committee. I enjoy going to the meetings. I get cookies at the PD committee, but I really don't feel very useful at those meetings. So I'd like for us to think about restructuring our committees so that they are more action oriented and they're forward work. So I really have nothing else to really say unless people want to jump in, but I was thinking about what Jamie was saying about us meeting outside of these hours to get more stuff done. And some other conversations I've had. So.
As far as committees go, I've always understood that the committees that board members sit on are, well, unless it's negotiations or superintendent search, but the normal facilities and PD, it's just like a board representative that just kind of sits in and maybe takes notes and just reports back to the board. When you do committee reports, you just say, hey, this is what PD's been talking about, or this is what, whatever, facilities, this is what's going on. Are you thinking we need to do more than that?
I think we need to not be on those.
Oh, not be on.
And we have administrators who go to those.
Enough said.
We have administrators who go to those and they can report back to us if there's a question or a concern that the board needs to address from those committees. But we would be on committees. We need to look at the strategic plan. We obviously can't do that in this venue with the amount of work that needs to be done. So maybe a committee is created for a strategic plan. We have some questions about the Articles of Agreement. Maybe we need a committee to start looking at. So we are working in smaller groups, 3 or less, so we don't have to meet those laws. We don't have to meet via Zoom for those. We don't have to meet in person. There are other ways to do that. So that's just what I'm thinking.
Yeah.
I just want to say I'm fully in agreement with that. I feel like we do have a lot of work to do and I look forward to getting it done. And I also know that we get good reports from our administrators, so there's no sense in doubling up our time.
Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, exactly what you were saying, because the transportation committee last year, I spent 3 or 4 times I had to get on a school bus and ride around either Ackworth or Charlestown, look at terrible roads after the floods and everything. And this year, I didn't have to get on a school bus all year. I'm very thankful for that. Because I'm not a guy that's built to be on a little school bus. Or not that they're that little, but.
You know, I guess the other thing that I'd like to add is that if there was one of those committees that really wanted one of us to be there, somebody would. It wouldn't be like,
Yeah.
you're on your own now. But
Right.
for the most part.
And maybe we're still attached to them, but we don't attend. Maybe that's an option.
Unless there
too.
was a need for us to be there.
But I just want to kind of plant the seed for that discussion that we have sometime in March or April now. Not
Yeah,
sure when that is.
but 2 years ago, we had to deal with Route 12 being closed and the floods and. all
Yeah,
of the
there's a lot of
roads.
work for
There was a
for
lot
that
of
committee to
the
do at that time,
buses
so.
going over roads that they normally didn't go over and all of that. So there was a lot of things that had to be done. And this year, thankfully, nothing got washed out, so. yeah,
So
do
far.
that. So far.
It will be
That's
work
true.
from
It's only-
12
it's
again
only
in the next
February.
few years. So it is a concern,
Yikes.
but not today. We'll leave it for art.
All right, so we will consider that. All right, strategic planning committee discussion.
So that's me again. So I really, one of our things to talk about this year is the strategic plan. And I'd like for us to put together a task force. I actually have a motion. I move that we create a task force, be created of no more than 3 school board members to identify data and data sources to be used in the assessment of the current strategic plan. Membership is voluntary and will be determined by the board chair. The task force will report their findings to the school board at the April 24th meeting. Is that the workshop, I believe? At which point the task force will be disbanded. Yes, we did. It's a motion, so,
Can you share that motion? Like,
yeah, what's up?
in email?
Yes.
Wait a
I
second.
will second that for discussion.
Talk to the motion first. Okay. And I think there's a lot I don't want to start on April 27th, having the discussion about the strategic plan without actually having done some of the boots to ground work first. So we have some place to start from. So it's really just a few of us getting together, working with the administration to find, go through this current strategic plan, find where we can find the data to support that has completed or has not completed. Maybe assemble that data so that when we come together sometime in April, we're ready to start working on the strategic plan and not just talking about working on the strategic plan.
More discussion? Jamie? Or Shelley?
No, I'm good.
Yes,
Were we voting? I vote yes.
I was just checking to see if you had if there was more discussion.
No, I understand it. Makes sense.
All right, so, Andy,
Yes.
Alyssa,
Alyssa, yes.
Yes, Joe, yes.
Kevin, yes.
Sarah, yes. Jamie already said yes. And Shelley said yes. Okay. All right,
So then they would just let you know if they
so
were
if
interested.
people are interested, why, let me know. And we will, if there's more than 3, then we'll have you battle it out.
So you get to choose, that's what it says. You get a sign, so you get to choose.
All right, Sullivan County LNA program.
So that's just for discussion purposes
Yeah, I
too.
think we
They
wanted to
had
say-
asked to come and present on their LNA program at some upcoming board meeting. And just wanted to make sure that the board was interested in having them come, talk about what they can offer. I know that they've been making the rounds in Sullivan County. They've been to Newport, I know, and Claremont, I believe. So just trying to make sure you guys are amenable to having, it used to be Derek Ferlin, but I'm not sure who would come this time.
Matt Lagos.
Matt
I
Lego.
thought it was interesting. I had just the one question that I asked the person that sent the email. And that was Fall Mountain students from both Walpole and Alsted would be allowed to attend since we're not in Sullivan County.
Yeah,
And he said absolutely.
oh, that's nice, because most of the time they say no.
Well, no,
Yeah.
I think it was the question that
Yeah.
I wanted to ask.
Yeah.
That's an important question because it goes right through our district, yeah.
Yeah, but I think they would be hard pressed to say no, considering they accept Cheshire County residents at Sullivan County Nursing Home, so.
Oh, yeah, that would be a thing. So,
But, I just asked, I didn't know.
Yeah.
I'd say, do we have like a career day or something that they could set up in or? I mean,
the middle school is doing a career day.
it seems to me like it's a thing for students, right, to not the board.
Yeah,
Yeah, I totally agree. That's why I just wanted to make sure that it was for all students, not just 3/5 of us or whatever. It works out.
Yeah.
I think what they're looking for is they're looking for people, for students to do this as part of their day or as a separate thing.
I think we'd have to learn more about it.
Yeah.
On April 10th, how does that sound?
Because they'll also probably want us to sign something, an agreement of some type.
But it dovetails nicely with, being able to get, points towards a career and like they had in their flyer that you could actually, they would help you earn hours towards your becoming a licensed practical nurse. And I'm like, that's sensational. I think that's a really good thing. If somebody wanted to be in that career path, some student.
Go ahead.
Yeah, my only question was this a presentation that's better for the board or better for the CTE program to do first? I don't know if it's really, I'm not sure that this is the right venue for that presentation, right? We're the first people they come to.
Well, that was gonna be my question. Is this something we need to have Deb Connell here? And then, I don't know how it might play into our, what's now not the business of healthcare, whatever we call that.
Whatever that will become.
Yeah. Because it seems like it could dovetail really well with that.
It would be a different avenue within healthcare, but yeah. I think possibly having them talk to her. as
I'll have
opposed
Deb
to-
talk
yeah.
to him first, because I didn't get that email. I think you forwarded it to me, but I didn't originally see it. But I'll reach out to Deb if that's the will of the board and have her talk to them first, get more information. Go from there.
So just to clarify, it started with Derek Ferland, who's the county manager. They've since hired Matt Legos
Oh, thank you.
as the administrator of the nursing home, the county home. So that's where that changed over.
Oh, I thought Derek left.
No, he's still the county manager. They just passed that position.
Okay.
Well, the other thing that we gotta think about as board is there could be many, many groups that come to us that want employees, that want to provide training and that would pay for it. So do you want to have a steady stream of people coming to the board saying that, hey, we'll take kids 14 years and up and we'll train them and we'll pay them and they could have a career in this?
Well, that's why having Deb talk to them first.
Or the school counselors too.
Yeah, and the Deb and the school counselors, yeah. So it may be that is where it would be, and we would just need to okay it and memorandum of agreement, MOA.
This seems weird to me that this seems like a sports thing that, people want to advertise sports, but you have to specifically say it's not a school sponsored activity. And this is just an employment opportunity, even though it's educational, it's, all right, done.
It gets tied into a lot of things at the state level too nowadays with the credentialing that the state wants kids to graduate with. So you raise some very interesting questions about the real meaning behind some things. I would agree.
Good, so we'll have Deb talk to them.
Yeah, I'll have Deb and the school counselors reach out to them.
Talk to them, yeah. Good. All right, so the consent agenda is personnel and the Fall Mountain Regional High School overnight trip. Anything that we want to take off of that? All right. Do I hear a motion?
I'll make a motion to accept the consent agenda as presented.
I'll second.
Okay, Andy?
Yes.
Melissa?
Melissa, yes.
Oh, yes.
Kevin, yes.
Sarah, yes?
Yes,
I think Jamie and Shelley said yes at the same time.
That's why it was so boisterous.
All right, are there committee reports? I have, nothing spectacular has happened over at River Valley right now, so.
There is
Okay,
a treasurer's report.
and the treasurer's report is circulating.
Motion to accept it.
Sorry, then I'll ask my first one. Thank you. Or I can ask it first. We really did talk about how we were going to have this go out to one person and have them investigate the whole thing and sign it. Can we please move to that? Because I did not look through all of these, and I don't want to sign it without having looked through all of them. So
Yeah.
how do we go about
Yeah,
making
we-
it so that one person becomes the
That's the whole board.
investigator?
I think you
think
have to pick someone, right?
Yeah, I think that'd be, I mean, it was included, all the vouchers were included in your packet. I don't know if there's anybody who feels how you want to do that. I think it's on the board making a decision and who's going to commit to doing that on a regular basis.
But you still, you need the signatures. I mean,
Yeah, we've
I know
seen
when
signing,
we've
signing.
done it in other districts where they've had two members come in, go through them, sign them, but then the board members still sign them at the meeting because.
Well, that would be basically.
Right. So the way we had discussed it was that two folks would be vetting it prior to it coming to the board. I think the problem is that it's not, we get it the Friday before a Monday meeting, which is a quick turnaround. It's not coming out as the vouchers are being actually sent or done, because we meet every 2 weeks. So I think you pay payroll biweekly and AP biweekly, correct?
Yes.
Well, my understanding was that what we were going to do was we were going to have, we had talked about having two people who would go in and look through those. What, since we hadn't established who those two people were, what Mary's been doing.
It wasn't initially to go in, it was to be able to have them emailed ahead of them being sent out.
No, that's actually not what we had talked about.
Okay,
I agree with Jamie. That's what we talked about.
that is what we talked about because we patterned it after what I do at Hanover and Dresden.
That's what I did. We had a motion on it and we voted on it. We
Who
could
were
go
the
back
two
through
people?
I think Joe was one because he said he was the treasurer. And I can't remember who the other one was, but normally what we do where I'm the BA is that two board members sign up basically, or get, whatever, by default, pick a short straw, I don't know. Two folks do it for a quarter. So every 3 months, the two people change.
Right, that's what we agreed to. And I agreed to go first, but how do we get started on this?
I thought we were already doing it. I'm sorry.
Who's the other person with Joe? Alyssa?
I would happily be one of those people as long as I have it longer.
So
when you're done, when the vouchers are issued, the reports are available. And so the voucher reports as they're issued should be attached to an all board blind CC'd email and sent out as they're issued.
one by one?
No, they shouldn't be one by one. You should only have like 2 or 3 vouchers.
Here's to make a suggestion. That we have Jamie write up a procedure.
I shared it.
Well, she has it. I have it.
And I've shared it.
Yeah, I have it, Jamie. I can just forward it onto the board again.
And then we can rediscuss it again at the next meeting and you can bring the vouchers back with you. If you want. I know you need signatures, Mary, but the checks have already gone, correct?
Correct.
Yeah, so we'll just, it sounds like we all need, or some of us need a little more time and that we can just do it at the next meeting. Hopefully we can sign.
Well, Jamie, to kind of alleviate that, I could send them out every week.
Well, that's what we had chatted about when they're, either weekly. I don't know if you cut checks like every day. Where I am, we only do them once a week. So
It depends, but for the most part, it should be once a week unless something comes up. We do our voucher for our direct deposits, and then we do our vouchers for live checks.
Right.
Separately, but like I said, I could do that as well, is to send them out at the end of the week when they're done. And we're doing payroll and AP on opposite weeks.
Yeah. So it should
that-
only be a few vouchers that we would look through.
Yeah, this time we just had a lot because you haven't done, it's been a while. So that's why you have so many. Because the last few meetings have been other things.
Understood.
Would you like to see them in person? It doesn't look the same on a screen. You can't go back and forth and look at what's in one place and what's in another. So I need them in person. I don't want to spend 100 pages. So I would rather, we have them, I'd rather stop into the office and look at them and sign them at that time.
Yeah, we found the actual motion.
The motion was to implement a process for providing the accounts payable information to the school board prior to the checks being distributed. And that it would start August 1st. That was when Jamie shared the actual document. If we made another motion actually assigning people, then
We don't have it.
well, it might be here somewhere, but I
Haven't found
don't
it yet.
have found it yet.
I think the people
But now you have the two
are
people.
doing it is irrelevant when we have that, so we
Yeah.
can start right now.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And so,
So do you and Joe want to be the two that are doing it for right
Yeah.
now?
Sure, we'll start off.
Okay,
Well,
so
I'll start off. I can
then
speak
the
for
two of you need to meet with Mary and just figure out a time that's going to be good for you to go in.
okay.
So I'm happy to take it over in March after the vote, but I'm not going to come in. I'm only going to email her if I have questions on certain ones, because it's not required that you have to go in.
No, it's just easier for me to do.
Yeah, I understand. Yeah, I understand.
Okay. So, all right, but for right now, the two of you.
So Joe and I will do the next month or so, and then we'll determine that process when we do the rest of our officers.
All right.
and such.
So you'll work with Mary in terms of what day works and what times and stuff. Okay,
Perfect, thanks.
good.
Yeah, if it's during the day, Mary, it doesn't really matter to me. I'm
Okay.
free most days.
No, that works for me. Yeah, we can set up.
Unless I have some doctors.
I mean, and I'm flexible too, so I mean, I'm there all day, so whatever works, we can figure it out.
So are we holding
Sometimes at night.
this particular report until next one? Or are you gonna sign it? Are we accepting it?
Can you accept it because you have most of the signatures, and then I can still look at it and deliver it tomorrow?
As long as I have,
What?
yeah. I mean,
Then that's a-
if- or we can wait, it's up to you.
All
We
right,
already
so,
need to get at least 4 signatures on it.
Right, I mean, that's just that you need a,
Right.
You're good.
I think that, yeah, I think
all right, so
4 of us had signed up. Everything there.
so are we taking a motion to accept the report?
Make a motion to accept the report.
Okay.
I'll second.
A second, okay.
Yes.
Alyssa,
I'm gonna just abstain from the vote.
okay.
Yes.
Kevin, yes.
Sarah, yes.
Yes, Shelley.
Jamie abstains. I haven't had a chance to look, sorry.
All right. Information included in the package. Okay,
I think Jamie wants to have it in public.
and then, so the information is all included in your packet for what those, for the reports. And the treasury report, treasury report down there.
Mhm.
And then, we do have a request for going into non-public. You were gonna read it?
Yep, I'm gonna make a motion to go into non-public, I don't know how to say it exactly for,
Personnel to discuss. personnel
discuss personnel.
Yep.
Okay. So
Under A and C.
A and C.
Okay. Andy,
Yes.
Alyssa, yes.
Joe, yes.
Kevin, yes.
Sarah, yes.
Shelley, yes.
Jamie,
Yeah, Jamie, yes, thank you.
thank you, y'all.
I didn't get the email. If Amy was- if you're gonna-
I'm printing it.
Okay.